Welcome back to our channel. On today's video, we're going to be looking at the top 10 worst white communities, and that is what today's video is about. Simply put, the problems of white population in the United States are different than the problems of minority communities. White America definitely has its problems. Take the state of Florida, where we have communities like in Pinellas Park and in Daytona Pines. These are called predator communities. These are entire mobile home parks that house nothing but registered offenders. That is a huge danger to society and a crime that most often goes unreported, and the victims are afraid to speak up. Interestingly enough, it seems that every time we go into these pervert parks, we find that there is usually a large amount of pro-white, pro-Anglo, and extreme right-wing propaganda in these communities, and the demographic of these communities is usually at least 96% white, so we know that the people who live there are of a white background. Clearly, these white communities are not dealing with the same dangers and safety concerns as Hispanic or Black communities, where perhaps violent crime or other type of inner city activities are the threat. Here in these white communities, the drug overdose death rates are unbelievably high. You're 3 to 4 times more likely to die from an overdose in these communities we're going to talk about than you are to get shot or killed in a bad Black inner city American hood. For some reason that I don't understand, these poor white communities also seem to shelter registered predators, which means that if you have families, it is definitely not a community you want to be in. Clearly, the problems that these white communities are dealing with are very distinct from the usual portrayal of poverty and crime in the United States, but it exists. Let's get into it. Number 1 is Springfield, Missouri. Known as the whitest large city in America, over 90% of its population is white, and this city has a lot of problems. The crime rate is ridiculously high. The overdose rates in Missouri in general are high, but in this particular city, they are terrible. While there, we noticed that there were homeless people everywhere, begging aggressively at the intersections and in restaurant drive-thrus. Even in the downtown main plaza, it looked like an open homeless camp. And really, the problem wasn't even homelessness. It was more addiction. You could see it in their faces. And I couldn't believe that while driving through the downtown of a large American city, I literally saw people in the town plaza with needles on a sidewalk. Missouri's been struggling with really high overdose death rates for a long time, and Springfield really is an embarrassment of an American city. We were at a Starbucks drive-thru and we had a woman come up to the window telling us a sob story about how she had children who were hungry, but we could see right through it. On a drive-thru Springfield, Missouri, you're just going to see zombied out people looking desperately for their next hit. It really is a sad, depressing place, and that is why it is number 1 on today's list. Number 2 is Ironton, Ohio. Located in the southeast corner of Ohio, this impoverished community has some of the highest overdose death rates in the country. Where Kentucky, West Virginia, and Ohio meet, these small towns and rural communities have overdose death rates higher than 100 per 100,000. To give you a comparison, the city of Miami, Florida is about 10 per 100,000. That means that in these rural communities, you are more than 10 times as likely to die from an overdose than you would, for example, in a large city like Miami, Florida. The situation in this part of Ohio has gotten so bad that you can literally buy a livable house for $20,000. Despite those low prices, people are moving out instead of moving in. Number 3 is Portland, Kentucky. This is actually a district or a neighborhood that at one point was its individual city, but eventually was swallowed up by Louisville, Kentucky. A segregated city where the west side of the city, the poorest region, is predominantly Black. But the northern tip of the West End, an area known as Portland, is actually the poorest region in Louisville, Kentucky, despite being predominantly a white population with a large Irish community here. Now, I went to school in West End, which is, again, the poorest side of the city, and I remember the poor Black kids that I went to school with making fun of how poor white Irish kids were in Portland. You would think a city as historic and ancient as Portland would have some type of revival to save its historic districts, but it's not the case. they look down on Portland as being the roughest, poorest, and just saddest neighborhood in all of Louisville, Kentucky. A neighborhood that for historical value should be important, but who the crap is going to invest money here? Low property values, high crime rate, high addiction rates, and increasingly high murder rate. Portland, Louisville, Kentucky is definitely a place you do not want to live, and it is definitely one of the worst white hoods in America. Number 4, Ashland, Kentucky, known as the opioid capital of America. Again, where Kentucky, West Virginia, and Ohio meet, this region is just plagued with the highest drug overdose rate in the country. Many people blame it on the coal, other people blame it on the doctors, the pill pushers. Whatever the cause of the problem, I think geography plays a huge role as well, because this area is very mountainous and incommunicated. Whatever the contributing factors are, the facts are clear. This is the most troubled region in the United States, from losing their population to coal industry, as well as people just leaving the area in general. And then you have all the people that are dying from overdoses left and right. It seems like this area will soon be more vacant than it's ever been, as people are fleeing or simply dying. It's a hopeless region, plagued with some of the worst poverty in the country. The number 3 poorest community in the United States is actually here in eastern Kentucky, and as much as 3% of the population has a bachelor's degree, which is usually about 28% somewhere else. Lack of education, lack of effort, addiction. There are so many things holding this area back. This is definitely one of the worst white communities you're going to find anywhere in the country. There's poverty here because people are lazy and they prefer to be addicted to drugs. And I hear the narrative that other YouTubers are pushing. We ran out of coal. Look, that's absolute garbage. These people are lazy, they're drug addicts, and they don't want to work. If a black person or an Asian or a migrant has something, then they cry about, we want to give help to the migrant. They give everything. They don't give nobody to nothing, dude. The only thing they give you is a job if you want it or not, and you don't want a job, you want a crack pipe. Look, I don't buy into this whole Appalachia poverty story. I lived in rural poor Alabama, and I made a great living, and I don't even have a high school diploma. They're lazy drug addicts. Even being a minority, I made very good money living in poor rural Alabama. While everybody around me starved, I was doing great, and I had very little resources. All I had was willpower. Quite simply, the reason these people are failing is because they don't try hard enough and they're drug addicts. I don't buy into that whole story of, oh, you know, the industry's left, so now we're starving. Dude, people die to come to America, and you're here already. You have a U.S. driver's license. You're legal. You're born here. You speak English. Get off the couch, turn off Fox News, and go get yourself a job and get off of drugs and be successful like the immigrant communities. Number 5, Huntington, West Virginia. West Virginia's overdose death rate as a state is now pushing over 90 per 100,000, the highest in the entire country. So we can assume that their large cities are going to be a complete mess. West Virginia's drug addiction problem is bad. Its economy is bad. The people are sad, bitter, and miserable. And well, there's really nothing nice or enjoyable to look at here. And hospitality is an absolute mess. So if you're even traveling through here, we've even had trouble finding a clean hotel room because the personal hygiene in this part of the country is also fairly low. Their expectations are low. Their hygiene is low. And even traveling through this part of West Virginia is an absolute nightmare. We were eating at a Chinese buffet, and we had a customer call the cops on the Chinese people because there wasn't enough meat at the buffet countertop. When the cops showed up, the cops actually extorted the Chinese business owners, demanding $500 cash as a cash fine, or they were going to have immigration raid their business. Now, me and my wife happened to be wearing camo on this particular day, so we faded in pretty well with the locals. And it was interesting to get a front row seat at watching these people extort this business simply because they were Asian. Number 6 is Moon Lake, Florida. Located north of Tampa, this is a large rural area encompassing some of the largest collections of mobile home parks you'll ever see. It's also been featured on the Cops TV show. Some of our subscribers tell us crazy stories of people using hogs to get rid of bodies. Who knows if that's true or not? What we do know is that this part of Florida is absolutely scary. It is one of the poorest regions in the entire Tampa Bay area. People in Moon Lake live like absolute savages. The roads are not paved. Some people just live on empty lots and homeless shelters. We've seen people erect 16-foot fences to keep people from breaking in and stealing stuff. Everybody knows where the junkies and the addicts live. Moon Lake is an absolute crap hole. The roads are not even paved, much of it floods. The vast majority of the housing is mobile homes, and a lot of people are just squatting on empty lots, making large homeless camps. Crap, at least the black people have houses. Pasco County is known as Trashco County to the locals, and Moon Lakes is kind of like the landfill there. Number 7 is North Fort Myers. With communities like Pomona Park and Suncoast Estates, poverty reigns king, and the vast majority of the population here is white. A lot of the people here live in homeless camps, so if you have a trailer, well, you're pretty dang lucky. Last time we went to North Fort Myers, we actually saw somebody overdosing on a sidewalk. And really, that's what you would expect to see when you go to North Fort Myers. The city of Fort Myers has Guatemalan areas like Tice, black areas like Dunbar, but the absolute worst, most crime-infected, homeless-infected, and drug-infected area, as well as one of the highest murder rates, are all within North Fort Myers, the poor white region of this city. If you watch my North Fort Myers videos, almost every single time we head out here to do videos, we run into some type of overdosing ordeal or another. It's just a daily occurrence here. There's also a huge concentration of registered offenders here, typical for these communities. Fort Myers is literally one of the fastest growing communities in the entire country, so there's absolutely no excuse here. And rents are about half what they would be in other parts of the county, so really there's no excuse for people here to live like this other than, again, laziness and addiction. We interviewed one lazy homeless person here who told us that the immigrants were taking his jobs. But I've never seen a Guatemalan on crack, so I don't know what he's talking about. Number 8 is Anderson, Indiana. What a sad and miserable town. Not only is this town losing population and falling apart, it's also dealing with a huge drug problem. And on top of all that, these have to be the nastiest and rudest people I've met anywhere. No wonder their town's going to crap. We ended up in Anderson to look up an address for a property where my wife's family originated from, and my wife was just distraught. You know, she had beautiful memories in these houses in Anderson, Indiana, but when she went back and see what this neighborhood turned into, it really was disappointing that the place where she had so many beautiful memories had turned into just a massive crap hole. A lot of people are dying from drug overdoses, others are moving away. The only people that are really moving into this town is a small Hispanic community. They're the ones that are fixing up the houses that otherwise were falling to crap. Despite the fact that this community is moving in, fixing houses, and preserving the city skeleton from decomposing, the locals are actually pretty apprehensive of these people. It's like, here's a community that's willing to move in, fix up your town, start businesses again, and repair the houses that are falling to crap. But of course, they would really rather watch their town go to crap than to watch immigrant communities make their town better, because it just proves my point, which is laziness and drug addiction. There's really no reason for these towns to be going to crap. This is the United States of America. If you can't make it here, you can't make it anywhere. If a Central American family with no driver's license and no English is able to buy a house, fix it, and repair it, you should be able to do it too. And I don't see them on a street corner begging for money. I see them on a roof in the snow working hard to provide for their families. There's no excuses. Number 9 is Vidor, Texas. Now, most of Southeast Texas is very diverse, fast growing, and the economy is strong. But when you look at this little town, they are known as one of the most racist towns in America, by the way, because they've decided that they don't want to let anybody who's black or Hispanic move into their community. And well, when you look at the shape their community is in, I can't see why you'd want to move there anyways. There are some beautiful, well-landscaped, great areas that are predominantly white in the outskirts of Houston. But Vidor, Texas definitely isn't that. They want to purposely keep out other communities because they are a racist little town. And let me tell you, the racism sure as crap hasn't brought them any prosperity. Anybody driving along I-10 knows that it's not even worth getting out of this town to pump gas. It's a depressing place with rundown businesses, old decrepit mobile home parks, and some of the nastiest people you're ever going to meet. If keeping out other races is what they were going for, well, these are the results. Now, on the other side of Houston is a place called Katy, Texas. This is actually the most diverse city in the entire South. Houston has a huge amount of diversity, and this is what a diverse suburb of Houston, Texas looks like. Beautiful, clean suburban areas with businesses of all types of nationalities and hardworking people willing to do whatever you need done promptly. It is definitely a great place to live, and it stands in stark contrast to Vidor, Texas, a sundown town where they don't want to welcome anybody, but it's so bad, why would you want to go there anyways? Number 10 is Hudson, Florida, which is not too far from Moon Lakes, and it's technically almost the same thing, but it's different. See, Moon Lakes is like a rural part of Pasco County, and Hudson is an urban part of Pasco County. Along US 19, you have a white urban area, and there's great white communities here, like, for example, Tarpon Springs is gorgeous, Palm Harbor, Dunedin, Clearwater, beautiful communities all throughout this area. But then there's this patch along US 19 called Hudson, Florida, and let me tell you, boy, does this place have a lot of problems. Addiction, homelessness, crime. If it's bad, it's here. A lot of the population here doesn't even live in trailers. Again, they live out in the woods in makeshift homeless camps or shanty towns. I don't even know what to call these things. Now, I usually try to help people everywhere I go, and I've noticed that when I help people in this particular part of Florida, they're the most thankful because they have the most desperate situation. I've literally talked to people here where I'll offer them a meal, and they'll tell me they haven't eaten in 3 to 4 days. An interesting contributing factor, I think, is a lot of people move down to Florida to retire, and then their kids move down to be near their parents, but there's no opportunities for the kids. They're just there to help their parents, and they're stuck living in South Florida, not because they want to be here, but because their parents are here, and then after their parents pass away, they might inherit a house, but they still don't have a job, they still don't have anything going on in their lives, and well, their lives spiral out of control soon afterwards. These are just 10 of some of the worst white communities that I have seen throughout the entire country. Personally, I don't really look for this type of stuff, but I will tell you that most of my white hood videos actually get a lot more viewership than any other type of video that I do because people are just simply intrigued by the idea that there are white areas in the United States that are bad. These poor white communities are definitely forgotten, pushed underneath the rug, and definitely not getting the spotlight of media attention.